Happy Friday, everybody. I'm Nick Slavic. I'm the proprietor of the Nick Slavic Painting and Restoration Company. I'm also the host of this show, Ask a Painter Live. It's a show where I use my over 2 decades of experience as a craftsperson and an entrepreneur to answer any of your questions. And on today's show, Chris Shank from the PCA, the Painting Contractors Association, is going to be with us. We're going to talk about the difference between overtaxing employees and keeping them happy. So that's going to be a fun conversation. I know Chris is a deep thinker, and we're going to do that. And also, I woke up, I had a big itch to do some fine finishing today, so I am going to be putting some Fine Paints of Europe gloss oil on this prep cabinet door here. So look forward to that. Let's see if we can bring Chris Shank up here. Of the week. So it'll just take a second to pull him up here. Hope everyone had an awesome week. We got a lot going on this week, so I can bring you up to Chris Shank. How's it going, man?
Hey, good. Can you hear me? Hold on. Hold on.
I can see, I can't hear you yet.
I think it's connecting in.
Oh, I can hear you.
Might have to jump off and jump back on. How's it going? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you good, and it got rid of the delay too.
Okay, I think we're synced up. So there's a few things. First of all, I don't have my backdrop because we're getting it updated with our new logo. So that. The second thing is, it clearly looks like I need a haircut.
Yes.
Look,
it looks like you just woke up. You're in
Yeah.
civilian clothes. It looks like you're standing in your closet. You just threw a shirt on, like, oh my God, ask a painter.
No, I mean, this is the first time I saw myself, so that's terrible. And as I was preparing for this and getting set up, I was looking at the question of the week. Nick, did you have any problems with that question? Was that a little confusing or not? Because I think we're missing something in there.
Well, I think it's asking two separate things, but they do actually come together, and it's basically been one of the things that I've been working on the hardest for the last year. So I have a lot of thoughts. Why don't you elaborate?
Why don't I give you my interpretation of what
Yeah.
I think there's a wording problem and there's a typo in there. So my apologies. But I think it was supposed to be, how do you determine the balance between making your employees happy, but also getting them to work? So there was the overtaxing part, which is you don't want to overtax them. You want them, and we're talking about summer, and I know you've been on the Nick podcast with us. And so the whole question for you guys was, what do you do to take care of your teams? Do you guys take vacations, or do you just kill your teams through the summer? I think that was the intention, the original intention before it went out. How do you keep them happy, but make sure they're working without being overtaxed? So what do you think?
So number one, very rarely do all of us business owners have employees that physically work themselves to the point where their life is altered by their physical exertion. We have people that bleed, sweat, cry, work their tails off for us, but this is not digging holes, it's not laying cinder blocks, and it's not roofing in Arizona in July. So very rarely is somebody at the point of exhaustion to the point where it alters their life. What taxes employees more are mental things, like they don't understand what's expected of them. They don't know what's a deliverable. They don't know what the standards are. To me, my gut reaction when I heard that question is that basically, my people will physically exert themselves, but when employees are overtaxed, you're basically not giving them enough of direction. They're not prepared. They don't know what's expected of them. And then they still have these standards to hit.
That's interesting. I think everybody wants to do something great together, and we don't mind doing hard things,
Chris, my last and final note for this, when I was taking notes to try to concentrate my thoughts, is the exact wording: everybody loves accomplishing something great together.
I believe that, man. I think we're on the same page, because I always say, and I've hired for my team in the past where I built up Team Awesome. We call it Team Awesome. No matter what team it was always Team Awesome. And I tell people, like, you know what I want is for you not to be perfect at everything. I don't need a genius IQ to work with. I need people who want to do something effing great together. And that's what really truly lights my fire, and I think that's what people want. And they all these studies about what do millennials want, what's the next generation going to want. I think it all comes down to that. They want to be a part of something. What does that mean to be a part of something?
Yep.
So I hear that through what you're saying, and that's interesting. Like let's do something really hard together. And if you're communicating, and you're right, people don't realize, and managers sometimes don't realize how easy that is to provide, just to talk to your people. Just make sure everybody's caught up with the same passion and vision that you are. And where there's a will, there's a way. They'll find a way. They'll get the thing done. But let them get caught up in the fervor of doing something great together.
Yep. And I will say that having a baseline for somebody, basically saying, when you think of overtaxed, you think, oh, you're asking too much of me.
Yeah.
When you have enough numbers and metrics and data and science, which I love dearly, you can actually tell people, listen, this is the entry fee for this. If you want to be a craftsperson in the Nick Slavic Painting and Restoration Company, you need to produce at this much dollars of revenue an hour, and you must have this quality standard. And there's 10 other things you must do too, adhere to the core values and all this other stuff. But even giving people that will immediately lessen their sort of stress about a job, because they say, okay, now we know what's expected of us. And that's one of the keys of doing this. And constantly giving them the perspective that, listen, the first day of my business management degree in college, my first real business professor said, first in class, the purpose of any business on the face of this planet is to have a return for the people who own it. If that doesn't happen, it doesn't matter all the fun pizza parties you have. Yeah. There's no charitable donations. There's no goodwill anywhere. There must be a return. And it's good to also tell these people that this is going to be fun, but there is an entry fee for this. We need this minimum out of you. And magically, then you can work from there.
That's true. No, that's a really good point. And we want to kind of have these inspirational thoughts like, hey, we're all just having fun together. But there are also the entry fee. I really like that phrasing. Yeah, I think that's interesting. That's a good point. You kind of don't want to go too far either way. And that because when you're making money, you don't have a whole lot of margin for mistaking, goofing around. You just can't have people goofing around. So that's a good point. Well said.
But I do not stress it, because the last thing you want to come off of as a business owner is, listen, we're only here for the money. So I don't really care about you. I don't really care about the clients. But for young people who have not had deep thoughts about this, it's very important for them to realize, like, number one, here's this. Number two, this is what I expect out of you. And number two, well, not only is this what I expect out of you, if you do this, this is what you get from me, which is usually a bigger basket than what I expect out of them. So it's usually a good perspective to have. So
yeah, I think it's good that you have to remind people. I read something the other day that it was a young person basically responding to people say, oh, this generation is whatever. And so he was saying, we may not be like great DIYers and not know how to take care of the house and the car or whatever, but we have the emotional capacity to tell our kids we love them. Yep. So, like there is that, but we do have to bring maybe that generation, which is a beautiful thing, man. Less and less I'm hearing parents that say they don't love their kid, or they don't say they love the kids, and they don't touch. They do. And a lot of people are saying, like, I didn't come from parents that were very affectionate with me. But this generation seems to understand that, and they get caught up in the companies that are going to be a little bit more mission minded and motivated to kind of take care of each other. But you're right, they have to be reminded that making money is still important. Let me ask you one last question. Okay, I'll let you answer, then you could, however.
And before you leave, I actually have something to show you that proves all this can be done together too.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. Well, it's basically that question. Do you think painting companies don't quite realize how much power lies in the hands of employers and owners to bring people together and make them get caught up in that vision and that excitement of doing something great together? Do you think people are still trying to learn how to do that and how important that is?
Yes. And the amazing thing is, I mean, I was looking back at my time station, the thing that we all clock in on, and I think there's somewhere between 47 and 50 employees that have passed through my companies in the last 12 years. And I think back to every time that I've interviewed somebody, and almost everybody came from another job. They had a job. Very, very rarely do you find somebody who's unemployed, actively seeking employment, not making money right now, and bring them into your company.
Mm.
I would say between 80 and 90% of all those people had a job, were not happy at, did not feel like they were part of something, and were always looking for something better. So I
Mm.
think that, when we think as business owners, what you say is exactly right. We're looking for painters. Let's get some painters in here because I have a problem. There's people that want to give me money for painting. Let's bring some painters in. But you forget that your whole company culture, everything comes from the happiness of the people within. And if these
Mm.
people are coming to you because they want to be happier or be part of something, and all you do is offer them a different way of making money, they're not going to
Mm.
be happy. And that's why we're seeing
Right.
a lot of this big turnover in the industry.
Right.
And this does not, I mean, everybody's knee jerk reaction is let's go mini golfing, let's do go karts, let's do this. And that is 1% of company culture.
Right.
That is the very minimal part. It's leading by example, it's giving people
Mm.
opportunities, and it's, we've done personality assessments on everybody in my company to figure out what motivates them and what
Wow.
makes them happy. So this is
Wow.
the whole other part where we just went through a major reformation in my company. I let go 6 of some of my favorite painters ever in the last month. And it was very hard because they're beloved in the company, good people. They were actually doing fairly good work, but they didn't want to hold up their end of the bargain of we need to return something to me for this too, because if this is a nonprofit, we cannot do this forever. So
Mm.
as accountability ratcheted up, these people were not on the same page as us. Very tough. Now we learned all this because of personality profiles, and now
Mm.
that the core group of people who are here, we figure out there's 2 people that are very aesthetically minded, and they will be the happiest when they're on beautiful job sites. So that means farms in a tranquil rural setting, not putting them in the bathrooms of an industrial warehouse. You know what I mean? So if there's
Mm.
easy ways that we can look at these personality profiles and say, you just want to be around beautiful projects, why can't you do that, or at least try? Or
Mm.
and sometimes
Yeah.
just showing them that you're trying is will build in that happiness too.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. I'm glad you guys are doing that. It's exciting to hear. I also like that you have a really clean, clear example of how the decent human being thing that are bringing better people in, because that's part of modern apprenticeship that you put out
Mm-hmm.
there, that you also are using some filters basically to say, hey, we also know how to take care of problems when they arise. Um, so you got the before and all the prep work you're doing basically to bring in the right people, but you also got the house cleaning that has to happen from time to time to make sure that you keep the right people, and then you remove people who turn out to be not great fits, because that's what a lot of people are dealing with, and they're like, I don't know how to do that. But I'd be interested to hear that process. All that kind of reminds me. So you did the modern apprenticeship at the last expo,
Mm-hmm.
and then you got a video that's going to be coming out eventually, at some point, on that. The next expo we were talking about a really cool idea. Can I say it or not?
Absolutely, man.
Okay, so and you could correct me, but part 2 of Modern Apprenticeship we're going to be doing at the expo, and it's all about making sure you're doing the right thing to get the right craftspeople and training them accurately. So you're bringing in good people, and it's not like, again, back to, it's not, that's not where it ends. You want to make money, you want to be profitable, and you want people to continue to go and build into their path of fulfillment and mastery. So how do we do that? How do we get them into becoming craftspeople and doing beautiful work, right?
And as everybody would expect, science, data, real life experience, and there's actual action items that comes out of this. This isn't hire good people, do good work. That's not actionable. So
Mm.
the interesting thing is that we spoke briefly about is that right now, this morning, I got off the phone with Art Snarzik, one of my favorite humans in the world, and we went through personality profiles of 15 applicants for my business, and we narrowed it
Mm.
down to the 3 picks that I'm going to make later today, send out the confirmation
Wow.
emails. But we use science, we use
Wow.
data. I devised the perfect personality profile of a craftsperson that I think would operate the best in my company and for my clients. And we actually went out there and tried to find people who match this. So you cannot
Oh.
turn humans into data points, but God dang it, it helps. You know what I mean? It's
That's
like,
right.
and it's
Yeah.
fun. And I love
Yeah.
that stuff. So I've had a
Yeah.
combination of interviews and now this data. And this is the next experiment. So people know me for the decent human being thing, and we're doing that. But now we're getting to the next phase of, so you have some decent human beings. Can this thing be profitable?
Nice. Love it, man. I love that it's really balanced approach. You're always bettering yourself and learning things. You're a great educator because you're still learning. And I think learners are the best teachers. I always say that learners are the best teachers. So people are getting from you all your hard work. You're mixing with a lot of people and hearing a lot of stuff. And all you're doing is just giving that back. You learn, you take, you give. Beautiful, beautiful education happening over there, Nick Slavic.
Thanks, man. And one last thing I wanted to show you as proof of all this is so my people, we went through this reformation starting July 1st. And that after that, very shortly, I let 6 people go. The key to this, everybody became much more happy the stricter I became with the standards, which is really counterintuitive because
Wow.
before we all understood that we had to be good people, we had to do good work, and Nick had to make money somehow from this. But when you actually put numbers to that and then rate those people daily, hourly, weekly, monthly, it helps them understand it and they become happier. And one of the things that I help a lot of other
Ooh.
painters about is something that I call a project plan, which is basically we have a job here. There is one person on this job. They lay out hour by hour what they're going to do to get this job done. And then me being sort of, the expert in this, I coach them on it. I say, why did you do this before that? And it's right now we're not in the cutting phase anymore. We've moved through that leadership continuum to the coaching phase. So now when one of my young craftspeople makes a project plan for the week, I help them out in it. I ask them, asking questions, how they can do something better. And the proof is, this is one of my happiest young people right here, Brandon. He finished this job. This is a 54-hour job. He planned for it to take 31 hours and did it in 21. And he's never been happier. So when you say overtaxed or happy,
Huh.
you would say, Nick, you must be a slave driver. Like, did this guy even have a lunch break? He's like, no, this is one of the funnest jobs he ever did. It also turned out to be the most profitable. So for me, they're not mutually exclusive. You can do
Wow.
both together.
What is that you have there? What did you use to make that? Is that something you created or what?
Yeah, so everybody, it looks fancy. It's a free Google sheet. And all I do is basically, take a work order that we have for our people. Actually, Holly, a production manager, Holly, types in the price for the job and it automatically spits out an hourly budget. So it says, you need to complete this job in 54 hours. The young craftsperson on the job will take a look at all the things, the work order on the sheet, and he'll go to the next tab on that little Google sheet and day by day, hour by hour, list what they're going to do in order to hit that budget. And it's a good task. The best advice I got, and I see like John Busick, Nick May, they're watching the show here. A lot of good advice I got over the last year was your people need to know their numbers, especially from guys like Nick May and John Busick and Art Snarzik too. And so this was a way for them to understand their numbers. You have 19 on this job. There was 19 cedar posts that need to be chemically brightened and restored. How long is that going to take you? And they actually have to sit down and think about it. Before, they would just show up to the job and do it and say, it took me this long. Now, they have to think about it beforehand. And it gets them invested in the common goal we're having.
Okay, so when are you going to do some education on that? Show people
So
how to do that. And do you have a template? What's going on? What's happening?
this is it, Chris Shank. So what we talked about at the next expo is everybody saw the modern apprenticeship master's class I did, and it's great.
Yeah.
It's soft, it's beautiful, it's good. We've solved the labor crisis. We've got piles of these awesome people now. Now can you make money with them? And I'm going to basically show you how I took all these people and through this reformation, laid down the standards, and show you how in the month of July, I just got some preliminary numbers all back from this stuff. We did 25% more than our revenue goal, and we had a true 26% net profit for the entire month with 6 less people than I did the month before. So all this built up
Wow.
to amazing, amazing numbers. Now, a little bit of a blip on the radar. That's way better than it should be, but everybody knows me. I don't falsify this stuff. It's all an open book. It's all there. And at the expo, I'm going to basically show you how you take a whole bunch of people with no painting experience and you do that.
Amazing. Super excited. I need to rewatch this video, get it into a description to tell people that that's what it's going to be. Are you going to go over that sheet that I just
Yes.
saw at the expo?
That's one of about 6 things I did to take people who are happy and decent and make them into really good painters. So
Okay, so if an hour and 15 minutes at the expo is not enough because that's just not a tons of time, we may have to follow up with an online workshop where you step by step show people how templates, things like that. I'll talk with you about that in the future, but that's amazing. I want to hear more, and I'm sure other people will too. That's really cool, Nick.
And what you love too, Chris, is that this has proven that there's no excuses, which is you can make money, you can make people happy, and the quality of work goes up, clients are happier. All this can be done together. You don't have to choose between martyring yourself for the craft and being poor.
Wow, it's good. And That's a great one-liner. I want to end with that in my head. Just let that echo. That's
But
awesome.
you know, you're not getting out of here without a quote, a poem, words of wisdom, inspiration. Hit me with a deep thought, Chris Shank.
Hit you with a deep thought. Well, okay. Well, I'll tell you what we were talking about here in the office yesterday, and it's basically what we had been talking about here. Let me turn this off real quick. Um, Patrick Lencioni has the 5 dysfunctions of a
Mm-hmm.
team, and he talks about the lack of trust, the lack of healthy conflict and confrontation, the lack of accountability. I think it is. Eventually, it ends in the lack of results. There's something in there
Yep.
somewhere. Oh, commitment. So it
Yep.
goes lack of trust, lack of healthy conflict, lack of commitment, lack of accountability, lack of results. We all want to attack the results line. And we also, then we say, well, maybe it's not good structure and accountability. And then we say, well, maybe it's because it's not good commitment. We're just not getting their commitment, so we can't hold them accountable. Oh, no, it's because we're afraid to talk about stuff around. We need to start talking about. And Patrick Lencioni says there's one more layer, the most foundational in this pyramid, and it's trust. And so, like, oh, well, then let's build some trust. And he says, yeah, but to build trust, you leaders have to become vulnerable, and you have to listen, and you got to put yourself to take the hits first. And that's where we don't, because it hits here. So I think it's a beautiful thing to build trust. And you're talking about how you do that with your company
Mm-hmm.
and how you're building this culture. Trust.
Core
And
value number
you
one in
can't
my
hit
company.
results. What is that?
Core value number one in my company: gain and maintain trust. It's the most important thing of all, and it's our life's work.
Beautiful. Love it.
Love you, man. Thanks for doing this.
Love you guys. Ask a Companion, Nick, you're doing great. Thanks, man, for having me on.
Thanks for being such a big supporter. We'll talk to you guys soon.
All right. Bye.
All right. Thanks everybody for watching. I didn't want to interrupt Chris. He's always got a bunch of awesome deep thoughts. But Dustin Zapancic, thank you so much for watching. He just did some gloss oil. I'm actually going to get to some gloss oil here too. I've been itching to do a little bit of fine work here. Nick May, thanks for watching as usual. Tim and Amy Lemke, Christian Militello. Christian, what happens when let's be a part of something doesn't cover experience needed to be successful at your job? Absolutely. So one of the big lessons from late 2017 and 2018 is there's a huge difference between delegating and dumping. And just dumping on people who don't know what the standards are, don't have enough experience to do it, is horrifying. And it's not fun for them. It's not good for you. Delegating is the point where you can spend the time to train them, show them expectations, not only how to show them how to do the job, but be very clear about what's expected of them. And then the key to all that is accountability, holding them accountable to those standards. And then magically, then they have enough experience to actually be held accountable for some of that stuff. Dave Copeland, thanks for watching. Nick May. Christian, we have really great people who want to get stuff done together, but not enough people who know how to right now. Hey, listen, man, we're both in the same boat here. What's interesting sort of about what we're doing is, we're doing what normal painting companies do. We do good work, we do profitable work, we make happy clients, we do some fine finishes. But what's interesting is that you add up, the average years of service for painting is probably less than a year in my company. So we really don't have anybody with the breadth and depth of knowledge of some of these other companies. But yeah, it's all about setting the company culture so that they know that you're on the same sort of common goal as them, is that you want them to be happy, they want you to be happy, and in turn, you get good results out of that. And I feel that this open environment where I openly share metrics and common goals, it brings their shield and sword down a little bit, so they're not always at an adversarial relationship between boss and employee. And I think it lets them grow a little more. And I'm always open to feedback and detail. And basically at every one of our war room meetings on Mondays, it's basically like, I think I know the best way to do this stuff, But all I want is this result, and I'm open to anything and everything that you guys have to offer towards this common goal. It seems to be good. And Nick, make clear expectations. Absolutely. And consistent. Consistent is huge. And then knowing people, people knowing that there's going to be accountability is a great, great thing. So every Monday morning, we track all the project plans, all the job costing from the week previous, and we look at who overperformed, who underperformed. And I basically take maybe the 2 to 3 best projects and people who did a fine bit of leadership or craft or something else and point it out at the meeting. I also look at some of the worst jobs from last week or the underperforming jobs and say, you know, we workshop it as an entire company and say, was it my estimating that was off? Was it you that was off? Was there not clear expectations? Was the coding system a little different for this job? Something like that. Mike Wojan, thanks for watching. Nick Brassfield. Mike, good afternoon. Same to you. John Busick. Always love talking to John Busick. Tina, Craftsman Tina, watching. Mike Danahy, how's it going? Zach, trust is most important. Listen, man, that's why it's core value number 1 in my company, gain and maintain trust. And within that, we gain and maintain the trust of not only me, my employees, but we also do it with our clients too, and the community which we live in. So Sonia, thanks for watching. Oh, Byers, thanks for watching. And Archie, thanks so much for watching. Love talking with Archie. He's one of the great industry leaders that we have here. So guys, I've been itching this morning. I woke up with an itch to do some fine finishing by hand. And oh, Scotty, you like the overalls here? These are special ones. They got the, I don't know if you can see it, they got the zipper. We got the zipper pocket too, so these are kind of cool. Big front zipper. These are nice sturdy ones too. So I'm going to do a little painting. Felt like painting today. So here we go. We have gloss oil from Fine Paints of Europe. This is actually from a project I did on my own house. I did beautiful, beautiful gloss oil doors on my house. And did them all by hand. And I got to say that I've been around the industry long enough now where I used to be able to just buy oil wall paint for interior or oil house paint exterior. And the biggest problem with oils is that they don't cover very well. They dry very slowly. You know, they're not easy to work with, things like that, especially when you get into glossier paints. They don't really cover well. This stuff's phenomenal, man. For anybody who's used it, you know it. This is really not introducing people to Fine Paints of Europe. It's not showing you any special techniques, although you don't see a lot of it done by hand. I just wanted to paint something, and I just thought I'd show you guys. So here we go. And I'm using a natural hog bristle brush. Those are my favorites for real oils and alkyds. There's a lot of other brushes, you know, like Purdy Nylox is another good one. They got super fine bristles, but for this stuff, I'm still a traditionalist. I like the natural bristle brush. They seem to hold a lot of paint, and they're a little bit softer than synthetic bristle brushes. So you actually get the paint to lay out pretty nice. And one of the things I teach my young craftspeople is you never brush into the corner like this. You always brush away from the corner like that, because obviously you do this and you get, you know, big drip on the side there like that. Make sure we can tilt that up just a little bit. There we go. So one of the first things that I noticed when I was introduced to Fine Paints of Europe, maybe 2 to 3 years ago, was that the coverage is really phenomenal. And I was definitely not used to that with a lot of the other glossier paints or oils that I had used in the past. So that's always a delight. And when you're sanding between coats too, it sands like a dream. And if I was using a water-based enamel or a hybrid enamel, I would be much more deliberate and I would be probably moving about 2 to 3 times faster because of the drying time. But when you're using a gloss oil, and especially a really traditional sort of oily gloss oil, it gets you a ton of open time. So you can feel free to have a little bit more of the brush marks in the corners, things like that, because eventually when you do the rest of this, you tip it all off with a brush and it'll be, you know, it gives you a lot more open time to smooth out your brush marks. So this panel was, I was experimenting with some primers, and this one is actually a Sherwin-Williams Universal Water-Based Primer, more of an industrial coating. Went on beautifully. It didn't raise a lot of the grain, which normally water-based. And this is actually an oak panel. It's probably hard to tell on the phone, except for the corner where I masked it off here to step out my finish. But I was very pleased with that primer too. I sprayed it on. This one was with an HVLP. And it did minimal grain raising, which was great. And it actually stain blocked too. So with any water-based primer, I'm always leery of its stain blocking abilities. But this did a great job, and it sanded beautifully. And I think, if I recall, I have my notes on the back of this cabinet door, but if I recall, this stuff dried insanely quickly. We're talking, you know, somewhere between a half an hour and an hour. It did a great job. So. So when I did my initial project with Fine Paints of Europe, I did not thin it, and it worked very, very well. And then I progressed to do a couple more where I worked with thinning it and hand finishing, and it worked pretty well. It worked pretty well. So this paint is left over from one of those jobs I did, and I believe this stuff is thinned at about 15%. It seems to go on really smoothly. The problem is, you know, if you over thin a coating, sometimes the resin loses its hardness and its durability. And also you get into areas where it'll be smoother, it'll lay out better, but it won't cover as well. So especially when you're dealing with gloss paints and stuff too, I'm always very careful about how much you thin stuff. And basically I thin a lot of my coatings just to the point where you can tell that the coating's changed, if that makes any sense, and then I don't thin anymore. If you're trying to achieve a result of, normally when I thin my stuff, it's to get it to lay out smoother. Like when we use oil primers and things like that. And I do my experiments where I start off and I do maybe 5%, 10%, 15%, things like that. And then I slowly work myself to the point where all of a sudden I feel like the coating is not the same coating anymore. And then I back it off. And then I know that, you know, from years of experience, when you feel a coating or see a coating go on, sometimes you just know, like, I think the integrity of this finish is not going to be there anymore. And with primers and stuff, you can actually do the scratch test, you know, where I think the last time I was in the shop doing experiments with oil primer, I got to the point where somewhere between 15 and 20% thinning, most oil primers actually lost a little bit of adhesion, which is interesting. I didn't see any change in their stain blocking abilities, but I did see a big difference in adhesion where they actually started not bonding as well. So that was a very interesting sort of thing. So now I usually thin my oil primers, usually no more than 10%, because I like a nice thick coating. All right, so our oil's on. You can see plenty of open time here. Again, you brush away from the corners, not into them like that. I'm just very lightly tipping it off. There's barely any pressure from the brush. And what I did notice when using Fine Paints of Europe, the gloss oil, because of the open time and because of the heavy bodiedness of this, you do have to you do have to watch how thick you put it on, because even with a brush, you can get it uneven enough. You can see there's a little bit of a heavy spot right here. That's just from normal brushing. And if I left this alone, you'd actually have a sag in it. So it helps to thin it a little bit, put it on evenly, and then obviously when you get the benefit of a paint like this that lets you tip it off, you can get rid of any little imperfections. And when you're working with real paints like this that actually do have real open time where they're not starting to pudding up or skin up, you can actually massage around the paint, and the more you go sometimes back and forth like this and up and down like this, you'll actually even out the layer of paint. So if you do have that heavy spot like I did here, you'll actually spread it around a little bit. All right, there we go. Gloss oil door. Let's see if we got any other questions, comments. Otherwise, we are out of here. And it's family time, so every Friday at about 1:30, I schedule all my family time here. So Scotty, thanks for the compliment on the overalls. Phil Klein, excellent topic today. I love your perspective and approach to the business. Oh, thanks a lot, man. Also, what started showing up, which is really cool, is these top fan badges, which is awesome. And it's super flattering that there are top fans. So thank you all. People have been messaging me with their, hey, I got this badge. This is really cool. So thanks everybody. And Phil evidently is a top fan, which is awesome because Phil and I are very close friends. Nicholas Peter, thanks for watching. Gonzalo, thanks for watching. Mark Johnston, my historic restoration friend. You would appreciate this stuff, man. Gloss oil, traditional stuff. This is awesome. Ron Rice, friend in the industry, Ron Rice. Luke Mary. Vanessa, great work. Always good to hear you. Oh, thanks a lot, Vanessa. I appreciate it. Bamjia, and everybody, have a good rest of the week. Thank you so much for watching here. Thank you for watching me paint something. I just had an itch to do something today. I thought I would share that with you guys. And thanks for the great conversation about happy employee versus tax employees and things like that. And look forward to the second chapter of the Modern Apprenticeship Master's Class, where I tell you, you found all these decent human beings. Now what? You have to have a business. You have to make them happy. And I'll show you how we made a real business out of all these people coming up at the National Expo. I will probably give a sneak peek at the Craftsmanship Forum coming up as well too. But we will talk to you guys later. So Peter Benz, Vanessa, thank you so much. And we will talk to everybody later. It is now family time for me.